Thank you everyone for joining today's spotlight. We're really excited to introduce everybody today to our partner Upflow. Just before we get started, just to let everyone know, everyone is on mute today. But if you do have questions, and we hope you do, please just use the chat panel and we'll leave a couple of minutes at the end. We'll try to make some time for question and answer. And then obviously anything we don't get a chance to answer, we'll follow up with you afterward. And we'll also be following up with an email and an offer from Upflow at the end as well. So just stay tuned for that. Maybe to get us kicked off, we'll start with some introductions and let everyone know who's going to be talking today. We'll start with Alex Louisy, who is CEO and founder of Upflow, and Matt Mindrum, Senior Partner Manager. Gentlemen, I'll ask you to introduce yourselves.
Thank you so much, Trent. Very happy to be here today. So yes, I'm Alex. I'm the co-founder and CEO at Upflow. We started the company 4 years ago now. And we are here from New York today. Matt?
Yeah, thank you, Alex. Thanks, Trent. I'm Matt Mindrum. I lead the partnership organization in the coordination with all of our external partners, and grateful to have the opportunity to present to Appficiency and your customers today. Thank you very much for having us, Trent.
Awesome. Thank you, gentlemen. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Trent Beattie. I actually lead our partnership program here at Appficiency, and I get the pleasure of working with folks like Alex and Matt, and really excited to be part of the conversation today as well. So we're going to spend most of the time today talking and learning about Upflow. We'll take a minute to let everyone know who Appficiency is, in case some of you don't know who we are. But then I'm going to ask Matt and Alex just to kind of take us through some of the details around Upflow, the why, the what, the who and the how, if you will, so we can all learn a little bit more about where they fit, where they're focused, and how their solution can impact everyone. We'll make some time at the end, as I mentioned, for some Q&A, so please don't forget to use that chat. And we'll make sure everyone knows how to get in touch with us before we finish off today as well. So just kind of moving into the introduction on Appficiency, we are an alliance partner of NetSuite. Our practice is 100% focused on NetSuite and the ecosystem of solutions that kind of surround that platform. We have about 160 people around the world today. We've got well over 300 years of collective experience on NetSuite, where much of that time has come from folks working either at NetSuite or at NetSuite clients. So we've got familiarity with both sides of that coin, if you will. And as a partner, our primary focus is really making sure that NetSuite clients get the most out of their platform. And I've said this before, I'll say it again. We know that NetSuite doesn't do everything. And that's really why we work with partners and partners specifically like Upflow to help everybody get more out of that investment that they've made in the platform. So with that, let's get started. We'll move into introduction on Upflow. And Alex, maybe I'll ask you just to spend a couple of minutes and tell us a bit about Upflow. Let's call it your company profile, if you will, and maybe a little bit about why you just started to focus the solution on that accounts receivable management.
Thank you so much, Trent, for this introduction. And yes, it's really, really good to be part of that ecosystem, working with companies like yours that have such a deep expertise in the NetSuite ecosystem. This is really where most of our business is as well, and we're very happy to be here today, as I said earlier. So just answering your question around the why we're here and why we started this crazy idea 4 years ago to work on unpaid invoices. Which seems like a kind of a boring topic, but is actually kind of a critical one for companies. It's actually the realization was that I was working in finance and I wanted to work on financing small companies. But I realized by talking to a lot of finance teams and business teams across different verticals, different countries, that there was one problem that was coming again and again, which was around how companies actually just get paid. And if you just take a step back, you will realize that there's a lot of companies out there that actually help you spend your money, so AP businesses, but very, very few companies are actually helping businesses out there actually collect their money. And that's when we started Upflow with a very simple vision, which was to actually help companies improving their cash collection rates. And I'll go deeper into this in a couple of minutes. Are you familiar, Trent, with the kind of like order to cash cycle for companies and how this is looking at the moment?
I won't claim to be an expert on that at all, but yeah, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful you'll take us kind of through that at a high level, so we've got a landscape where you're sitting.
Yeah, this is, I think the interesting thing is that, when you look at this, it's like 2022. And when you look at like all of the steps you need to go through to actually collect your money, it seems quite obvious, right? You just send an invoice in B2B business and you collect the payment and that's done. And the reality is that most of us, like on the finance side of things, actually know that like it's much more complex than this, right? And I'm not going to go through all of the steps, but you think about like sending an invoice, tracking outstanding payments during payment terms, waiting for the invoice to be late so that you need to follow up on late payments, then actually recording the payment and doing the cash application, sharing it internally and just doing all of this analysis. When you think about this for one invoice, but talking to businesses when similar to a lot of people that would be attending today, probably send hundreds or thousands of invoices a month. This is actually something that becomes really, really complex. And usually when you think about ERPs and billing systems, they're pretty good at like doing the billing. There's a lot of payment gateways as well, but what is really missing from what we understand is this kind of missing link that ties together everything. And that's what we built with Upflow. Does that make sense, Trent?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, especially just talking about the high level steps involved, and then you multiply that by the hundreds or thousands of times. There's
also something about the current environment when, over the last, couple of years now, like there's been probably like a lot of funding, a lot of cash out there. This is now changing, and we always thought that like it was a good time to collect money from customers and stop bankrolling your customers. But this is probably like even more true today in the current environment where you just can't afford that to let money on the bank account of your customers. So this is where we are. This is how we started. But I think the interesting thing, if you just take a step back in terms of how we see Upflow and how we see the positioning, is really thinking in terms of maturity stages in terms of cash collection, right? Because we realize that there's different steps now with different users. And I think like what is interesting is helping your customers, your users, seeing where they are on this journey and how they can improve. And it's interesting because oftentimes I'm being asked in a very honest way, like what is the difference with typically a dunning tool and specifically NetSuite dunning? And it's really realizing that like cash collection is not necessarily only about sending reminders. There's a lot of other steps that are involved. And the main thing that I want everyone to remember from this 20 minutes or 30 minutes we're gonna have today is really thinking about like, if you think about the world in 2030, right? It's quite unlikely that you are still sending out an invoice as a PDF and that it's coming back through a check payment or even a wire transfer. And really what we want with Upflow is giving you the technology to go in the future and seize that opportunity about like making sure that you are actually like transitioning to modern payment methods, modern payment mix. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to walk you through like all the steps. There's only 5 of them, so it's not like super long. And I could go like for hours on each of those steps. I'm only going to do a couple of minutes, but it's really the idea is to show you like how the product can actually help you go to that stage and actually improving your cash collection as a result. Okay, so let's dive into this if you're up for it. And again, I'm going to go quite quick on this, but if you think about like the first step and the very, very basic step, that would probably be around analytics. Analytics is really where the journey starts, and it's about like understanding what is happening on your accounts receivable. So if you think about like just knowing your DSO, so the days sales outstanding, how long does it take you to get paid? If you think about like making sure that like your sales team is actually aware of who are the customers that are paying or not paying, this is what we are talking about. In my previous business, which was a typical telecom B2B business, we used to sell to customers that never paid us and no one knew about it. This is really what you want to avoid. And you want to make sure that this information is shared with all the business stakeholders, not only the finance teams. And this is like the really, really first step of Upflow. What is interesting, Trent, and we talked about it earlier, is that because we see so much value in this and we consider this so much as a basic information. This is something that we are part of, that is part of our free product at Upflow that we call Discover, that you can plug into NetSuite in only a couple of minutes so that you have access to those key items and actually also identifying whether this is a problem or not for your business. Sometimes people say, no, that's fine. We don't have a problem with cash collection by nature of our business. And that's totally fine. We understand. And then it's great. Sometimes it's just, we can put a real ROI analysis and say, well, maybe this is something where you can investigate more, you could do different things so that you actually get value out of it. And when we think about value there, it's not only about like time saved, this is really like on your cash flows. And that's something that is super important. So that's the first step. And that's really about understanding what is happening in real time. The second step that we have at Upflow, and that's probably where the dunning part would be, is setting up a systematic process around your cash collection. The idea is that oftentimes you will see businesses where you have like Excel spreadsheets to manage outstanding invoices. So once in a while, you would pull like outstanding invoices from your NetSuite and then kind of go after like the most overdue or maybe the largest one in a way that is not really systematic. And here, this is what we want with Upflow. There is this logic of like workflows that you can make really like exactly the way you want to talk to your customers, with the right context, the right people involved. This is also super important. It's not only from the finance teams. This is really like the right people involved and the right contacts involved on the customer side as well. So this is really like what you want as part of this process, setting up a systematic process. Just one thing that is important when you think about a systematic process, we don't think in terms of automated process. A lot of people kind of think that like sending reminders is sending like a bazillion like automated emails to those poor customers that are going to get like their inbox full of reminder email. This is definitely not what it's about, especially when you're in the B2B space. When you have enterprise customers, you just want to make sure that you have the right context at the right time. And typically, like what you see on the right hand side here is what we call the timeline in Upflow. This is really allowing you to just make sure that like you're just sending the right reminder with the right people involved at the right time. So this is most of like what is called the dunning value around like kind of chasing invoices. But as you can see, there are more steps that you can do to improve your cash collection. This is not only about sending reminders. And I think one thing that a lot of companies tend to forget today, and that's what I was mentioning earlier when I was talking about how is the future going to look like in terms of payments, cash collection. And if you just take a step back, you realize that most of the payment verticals out there, whether it's retail, online, or even the consumer space, have really been changed in the last decades, because B2B payments are still exactly the same. We'll still send each other checks. We're still opening up an invoice and copy pasting like routing and banking details to send a wire transfer. And the truth is that this is probably not where the world is going. With Upflow, what you can do is actually setting up this portal and you see an example on the right hand side here. A portal is actually what you see on every single website when you buy something, which is the list of the outstanding invoices on the left hand side. And on the right side, different payment options where you can actually, as a business, as a merchant, so for you that are attending today, select which payment method you want to make available or not, right? So typically, like on top of checks payment, you may want to enable like wire transfers or card payments, for example, for small invoices. And there's something that is really powerful about setting up what we call pull payment method, where it's actually you pulling the payment from the customer's bank account. So, for example, setting up ACH payment portals where actually like you will be taking this money from the bank account of your customers. And this is something that sounds really difficult in the B2B space, but we've seen a lot of successes with companies actually setting that up, drastically reducing DSOs using this kind of payment method, right? So enabling those payment method is something that is really, really powerful. In terms of the next steps that you can have in terms of cash collection, it's not only about enabling those payment methods, but actually optimizing your payment mix. If you look at what is on the right-hand side here of the screen, this is a graph showing you the payment mix on how you collect money from your customers. So here you can see this is a mix of checks, direct debit, ACH, card. And for example, we have some B2B users that come to us and say, well, one of our issues is not necessarily that like we can't collect money, but collecting money, for example, from card payment is extremely expensive for us. Every time we're collecting an amount, it's like 3%. And maybe that's okay for small invoices, but not necessarily for the large one. And we would be interested in moving those to ACH. And this is where we can also help with the workflows, actually transitioning some of the payment method from one payment method to another, trying to optimize this, not only for the cost optimization, but also for DSO improvement. When, for example, again, you're moving from a push payment method where you wait for the customers to actually pay you, from a pull payment method where on the due date of the invoice, you can actually pull that money from their account. So it can be quite sophisticated, but this is something that we can help you do as part of this, right? And now the last step that we have is really thinking about like this ideal world where if your payment term is like 30 days, all of your invoices are paid on 30 days, and that's perfect. And then you still have those 30 days to finance as part of your working capital. And here, this is where factoring and the financing of it can come in. And this is something that we are investing a lot in at the moment to make sure that like long-term, you can also get this financing. And actually like, when you think about how do you get paid, this is also part of like, instead of having to set up like a very complex process within a bank, actually doing it from a central interface that is our product, where you can not only manage everything related to those outstanding invoices, but also get the financing straight from the app. Right. So if I just moving back to this, like kind of 5 stages, when you start about like something that is very simple about getting in the know, having the analytics, understanding what's happening, to optimizing your payment mix and financing, you can see that there's a lot of different steps. You don't need to do all of them at the same time. One thing that we always tell our users is really like going step by step. Oftentimes when we come in and we see like companies where, for example, in the construction industries where DSO can be extremely high, or in the tech industry where sometimes like you would want to move away from cards and stuff, there's a lot of different steps. There's a lot of entry points. Obviously, like the idea is to complete all of them. And this is where our customer success team and together with the teams at Appficiency, we can help you kind of set that up and making sure that this is a success. And again, the success here is not only saving time, it's really having a drastic impact for your business with your cash collection and having better cash flows. So just wrapping it up in terms of the value proposition that we have at Upflow, it's something that is really important for us in the way we've designed the product. If you go on demo.upflow.io, you will be able to see our product in real time. This is something that you can really set up in only a couple of minutes using our NetSuite certification and like the partnership that we built with NetSuite, right? And then once this is done, we can run you through like an analysis for, just getting a sense of the ROI you could get using a tool like Upflow with the expertise that you can get either from our teams or the Appficiency teams, and really making sure that you can see that step by step and moving into quantifiable results as time goes by. So hopefully that was a good overview of like how you could potentially like improve your cash collection as a B2B business in the future and how we could help you do this. And I'll leave it over to Trent for this. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks a lot, Alex. That was a whirlwind tour through those 5 stages. And obviously there's a lot more to discuss. As you said, you could spend hours in each one of those stages. But I think it kind of makes sense in terms of the progression that an organization may take as they kind of go through those stages. And I also just want to go back to the point, I didn't hear you call it out, but I noticed on the last slide, they're not necessarily in sequence. So a company could be somewhere in the middle of that order, but trying to figure out how to combine all the pieces together is really the ultimate goal. But the one question that kind of came to mind, and I think you referenced it to a point when you were going through, but if we think about the group with us today and the group that may join in and listen to our conversation later, are there particular types of businesses that you see as best fit for Upflow solution? Or maybe another way to look at it is, are there a subset of businesses that may not be appropriate? I'm kind of curious about that.
Yeah, so there's usually like any business that has issue with cash collection is kind of a good fit for Upflow. I'm just going to be very honest in the way that like if there's very, very low volumes, for example, if you do less than 50 invoices a month, this is probably not really like something that you need. Like, I mean, we'd be happy to help, but this is definitely probably not something that you need. And there's another type of business that we usually don't really serve. It's when it's like a consumer business or kind of a fully automated type of business, right? I think when Upflow makes a lot of sense is twofold. Is when there's high volume of invoices, and the second attribute is when it is actually like a wide different type of customers that requires like specific workflows, specific knowledge. And typically when you just can't send like automated emails saying, well, if you don't pay, we're just going to disconnect you and that's it, right? And the truth is that that's most of the business out there, right? If you think about like any project management type of business, any consulting firm, marketing agencies, logistic companies, like as soon as you start seeing customers where there's a customer success involved or a salesperson that is involved, it makes sense to make sure that like you have the right experience for them. A lot of people told us, and it was quite interesting, we didn't realize that at the beginning, Trent, but they were telling us, some of our users saying like, you're building a CRM for outstanding invoices. And that's pretty much what it is, in the sense of like, you know, in the CRM, like you wouldn't let your sales team run without a CRM, because they need to get organized, they need to have the right workflows in place. But at the same time, you want to make sure that like you have the right context before you reach out to the prospect or to the customer there. And the other thing that I would say, Trent, is that it's also part of the relationship. You know, like one thing that we didn't cover in the presentation is the fact that, for example, like there's no Upflow email, for example. It's going to be your company's email. And it's going to be your own signature. And this is an email that is actually coming from you as a person, from the team, not from a kind of an automated software, whether it's NetSuite, QuickBooks, Xero, or anything else. And that's also really part of the relationship. So any B2B business that is using like that has high touch type of relationship with their customers is usually a good fit for us, as soon as there's a bit of volume on outstanding invoices. Maybe the other thing that I would say, Trent, just to close on that one, is that if you're unsure of whether there's a need or not, that's the reason why we built that free plugin called Discover, where you can actually plug Upflow, and some experts from our team, some cash collection experts from our team can actually tell you, well, these are the benchmarks that we've seen in your industry. This is how much you could reduce your DSO by. This is how much you could save. And that's where we've seen a lot of success from, you know, just not trying to set it up because it was nice or because you needed another piece of software in your stack, but really seeing like the impact that you could have using a solution like ours.
Excellent. Yeah, that's fantastic. I'm just doing a bit of a time check. We're just about 5 minutes left, and I do want to leave a couple of minutes for questions from the group. I see a question actually came in, and maybe Alex, if you need to take a breather, Matt may be able to jump in on this too. But the question is from Rachel. All of our customers with credit terms cannot pay via credit card. Is there a way to set it up so all customers with payment terms don't get the option to pay with credit card?
The short answer is yes. Within the settings in Upflow, you can, as a merchant, select how each individual customer and groups of customers can interact from a payment method standpoint. So if you want to limit to ACH or limit certain transaction volumes to card or terms and so on and so forth, you have the ultimate flexibility in determining what that payment looks like based on that grouping of customers, for sure.
Excellent.
Good question.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel.
And part of the value proposition, just adding on this Trent and Rachel, is the fact that like there's really this idea of like workflows that are similar to cadences in Upflow, and you can build as many cadences as you would like to in Upflow. So for example, let's say that you have a group of enterprise customers, you may want to go after them in terms of outstanding invoices in a different way than small customers. This is really something you can do in Upflow. And the main difference as well that I would say is that it's really flexible and it's been built for the user. So you can really modify those like on your own. We're more than happy to help you. I'm sure that the Appficiency team would be happy to help you doing so as well. But the point is that, and that's really something different from like kind of configuration in NetSuite, is that you can really do it by yourself, adjusting the messages and really like improving this as you go. So that's not only about the payment, but also how you reach out to them is really like the way to go. So yes.
Yeah, that's actually great. There was another question that came in I saw earlier, and Alex, I think you kind of touched on the topic. It's about, how long does it take to set up Upflow, and who needs to be involved from our team to set it up?
Yeah, that's a great question, and again, like a big differentiator. Matt, I don't know if you want to take that
Sure.
one.
Yeah, we can be live in as little as a couple hours. We are a suite app, a certified suite app, so it does not take very long for you to click through the process and authenticate Upflow within your instance. And then you're visualizing the analytics that from that first step. You can see what's happening with your DSO, with your at risk or potentially the invoices that you might have to wind up writing off. There's some configuration that you can get advanced with. We're certainly happy to help as well as the Appficiency team. We can integrate with Slack. We can integrate with Salesforce to help automate some of those other stakeholder positions in the communication workflow. Say your client management organization or your CS team and your account executives, especially if they're a pay on pay. They want to be involved in a streamlined process to help collect money so that they actually receive their commission or their bonuses on time as well. So there's some configurations like that either team or as a collaborative effort can help with. But just getting started and the time to value and being able to start collecting cash at a rapid scale is very simple. And then we can take steps in that maturity cycle to enhance and augment the collection process.
And we've just got about a minute left, but I did have another question for you. I don't see any others coming in. Actually, yeah, we answered the ones that came in. I had another question for you in terms of use cases. Are there use cases that you've seen that have had kind of quicker returns? So, what are kind of the low-hanging fruit, if you will?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that one. I think, there's very, very like a lot of different use cases, but where there's an immediate value is usually when cash collection has been put on the back burner for quite some time, and you just connect Upflow and the Discover, and you see that the aging report is really looking bad. There's a lot of overdue invoices, more than 90 days overdue. And, without going through like all the complexities and, what is the long-term type of like process that you can set up with Upflow, having a very like instant actions around like, sending a few reminders that are going to be focused on the most overdue debtors is usually with those cases where you get to see these users that come back to us and say, well, I can't believe we collected like, $500K, $1 million in like only like a 1 month window. And this is something that makes a lot of difference. Now, this kind of blitz action that just go like from one go, it's just like, it's great. But then the challenge is more like long-term. How do you keep on doing this? How do you make sure that like you have a healthy AR under control? And that's when on the long term, those workflows and those processes and improving like those maturity stages make a lot of sense. So it's kind of a two-step approach, if that makes sense.
Yeah, awesome. Gentlemen, I've taken you past the time that we asked everybody to join us today. So I really appreciate this. I appreciate everybody's time for joining us. We did want to make sure you have contact info for both Appficiency and Upflow. Obviously, either one of us can get connected with the other. And the call out on the bottom of the slide, the Discover for free, both Alex and Matt have mentioned it a couple of times. There is an offer on the Upflow site to go and see a bit of this for yourself. So we'll follow up today with just a thank you email. We'll include a link to the recording of today's session, and obviously a link to the Discover product. So we won't leave you hanging. Try to click that button on your screen. And again, really appreciate everybody joining us. Matt, Alex, thank you very much from the Appficiency team, and everybody have a great holiday season.
Thank you so much, Trent. Have a good one.
Thank you. Happy holidays, everyone. Thank you.